So good afternoon and welcome to Telework and the Current Commute, the kickoff to our new Twin Cities Telework webinar series. I'm Commuter Services Vice President Kate Meredith. I'm joined today by our Outreach and Programs Manager, Michelle Leonard. Hi, Michelle. Commuter Services is the outreach program of the I-494 Corridor Commission. The commission consists of elected officials and city staff from our member cities, which consist of Bloomington, Richfield, Edina, Eden Prairie, and Minnetonka. Commuter Services is one of 5 transportation management organizations, or TMOs, in the Twin Cities. We provide free resources to encourage sustainable commutes, such as carpooling, van pooling, biking, walking, taking transit, and working from home. Our resources are available to commuters and employers, and we'll provide a bit more about what our resources are and how you can access them towards the end of the presentation today. So Commuter Services has assisted employers in establishing or formalizing telework as a business strategy for more than a decade. COVID-19 took everyone by surprise, and companies had to send employees home with little notice and with varying degrees of telework readiness. We have conducted 3 surveys since mid-May. Each was different in scope, and combined they are helpful for understanding employer and telework preparedness, and it sheds light on real challenges to overcome as well. Michelle will get us started on the commuter survey data. We'll first look at the highlights from our May commuter survey, conducted while Minnesota was under its stay-at-home order. Next, we'll move into the August commuter survey, where we start to see some of the changing travel patterns of commuters. Then we'll take a look at highlights from our recently concluded employer survey, where company representatives weigh in on future considerations for telework. We'll pull it all together to illustrate the effect telework can have operationally and on commuting in the future. We are recording today's webinar, and though we have a question and answer period at the end, please feel free to submit your questions using the Q&A is preferred versus chat, and leave questions or comments, and we will address those after the presentation. So again, thank you for being here. There's lots of great information, lots of data. We'll try to break it down and make it meaningful and hopefully have a good conversation at the end. So I'm going to pass it on over to Michelle.
Good afternoon. And thank you all for joining us. I'm about to throw a lot of numbers your way, and for that I apologize, but it's good stuff, so just hang in there, all right? Our May survey was initially designed to give us an idea of how commuter habits have been altered by COVID-19 and Minnesota's stay-at-home order. It was broader in scope, and that we not only asked questions relating to telework, but we were also focusing on bike commuting and potential participation in some of our other programs like our Bike to Work Week and our Commuter Challenge. This was our largest survey of the year, and it was distributed to everyone who had participated in a commuter services program since January 2019. We received 750 responses, and we had a 13% response rate. Now, going into the May survey, we knew that telework had become, the catchphrase was the new normal. And particularly with the organizations along the I-494 corridor and the whole region. So to that end, in March, we had a record number of requests for telework materials from both commuters and employers. But until we did this first survey, we didn't really understand how many commuters were working from home and no longer traveling to the work site. So as this chart indicates, the question was, what was your primary commute? And out of this chart, 79% of our respondents in May said that they were teleworking, and only 9% were still driving alone. Also, several of the people who said that they were driving alone or bike commuting. They also indicated elsewhere in the survey that they were essential workers or that they were in the healthcare industry. And then we also found that out of our responses, there were 41 people who said that they had either lost their jobs or were on furlough. So another way to illustrate this impact of telework on the corridor is to look at kind of a comparison of the telework and drive alone commutes. We'll first look at the green bars because those represent the number of people who are working from home. Now, prior to the stay-at-home order, you'll see that just 38 people said that they were working from home. But then look at May, or during that section in the middle there, where we're 2 months into the pandemic, and that number had skyrocketed, 590 people, which represents that 79% that we saw on that previous page. And then we'll look far over, we'll look at those drive alone. I wanted to first of all look at the drive alone numbers, which are those blue bars. And you see that in May, we had 428 people that were driving, or I'm sorry, prior to the pandemic, we had 428 people that were driving alone. And then in May, that number had dropped to just 62 people. And then finally, on the far right column, we look at what people anticipate as their return to work. And what we see coming is that a fair amount of people still expect to work from home after the company's return to the work site, but even more people plan on returning to a drive alone commute. So then I get into this page where we've got two different things happening here. First of all, the graph on the left kind of breaks out the commute methods that respondents plan to use post-pandemic. We see that 29% plan to continue working from home, but we also see that 33% say they'll drive alone when they return. And then by comparison, you'll see that there's just 7% that will carpool again and 6% saying they want to take a bus. So on the right side, we focus on shared commutes, which are carpools, van pools, buses, light rail transit. And on that chart, on the right, the green bars show the number of people who use a shared commute prior to the stay-at-home order. And then the yellow bars are the number who plan to resume shared commutes when they return to work. And here we really to drive alone instead of taking a sustainable commute afterward. And then on a final note on this page, this survey was done in May, and we were just, it was the springtime, and there were a number of people that said that they were going to be bike commuting for the time being. So we think it's safe to assume that with most companies a lot of companies we're hearing are going back to work in the spring, we feel it's safe to assume that there will be an increase in bike commuting again in the springtime. So we want to just look at the hesitancy that we heard in that survey. And out of that, 45% said that they would probably not return to their prior commute because they expected to continue teleworking more long-term. And then we had several others that cited more health and safety kind of related concerns, particularly when it came to resuming carpool, van pool, or bus or train transit. 13% said they would probably drive alone because they would feel safer in their own vehicle. And another 12% expressed concern over social distancing in shared vehicles. Now, again, this was in May, and over the last few months, and it's worth noting, Metro Transit, Southwest Transit, and all of the other transit agencies that we partner with, they've made great efforts to keep their customers safe. They've implemented daily sanitation plans, put plastic shields in their vehicles. They've started touch-free payments. There's seat spacing regulations. all kinds of things that they're doing to ensure commuter safety. And Metro Vanpool likewise has created new programs, including a one that's they call a Clean Car Kit, which they provide for Vanpool users, and they can take the Clean Car Pledge, where they pledge to all participate in keeping their shared vehicle clean. And we are in regular communication with all of our transit and Vanpool providers, and we like to share that information with our commuters as it becomes available. So now I'm going to shift into the August survey, and that was written in part to assist MnDOT in gauging how and when traffic levels might start to increase around the I-494 corridor as employers bring staff back to brick and mortar work sites during and after COVID-19. This survey was sent to a smaller group. It was just individuals who had received our services or resources since the beginning of 2020. And this pool was smaller. We still received 483 responses, and that represents about a 12% response rate. Again, we asked commuters to cite their primary commute. And this time we started to see a little more movement away from telework and a higher number of people who said they were otherwise commuting. And that signals, we think, kind of the start of a return to worksite trend for some of our organizations. In this survey, there were 2% of the respondents who did note that they were using a combination of working from home and driving into work. And there were 4 individuals who said that they were on a similar hybrid program where they were working from home and the work site, but they were also biking, carpooling, or taking transit as their alternate way of getting to work. So let's talk about the changing commutes. So we asked them what their telework arrangement would look like maybe through the end of 2020. And at the time, it was still August, 65% of those who responded said that they were working from home and expected to continue doing so through the end of the year. And another 20% thought that they would be in the home worksite arrangement by the end of the year. And we had another 15% who had said they already had started that home worksite arrangement. So then we move into what commuters expect for their 2021. And for the most part, commuters who have been working from home in 2020 do expect to return to the work site in 2021. But they're just not sure what their own telework schedule will look like in the future. Most people are planning on a hybrid arrangement where they work some days at home and some days at the work site each week. We had 20% who anticipated working primarily from home, and another 4% who said they think they will not work from home at all. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Kate, who's going to go over the employer survey highlights.
Great, thanks so much, Michelle. A lot of good information, and you digested it and presented it really well. So the feedback from our 2 commuter surveys was helpful, but we recognized in some cases respondents were likely unsure of their employees' long-range plans. We just wrapped up our employer survey in November. It was distributed to approximately 900 employer contacts that Commuter Services has worked with over the past several years. We did not have as much participation as we anticipated, but we did hear from 68 employers, and we feel that the data does help us get a better idea of how organizations along the 494 corridor plan to implement telework. So we've seen how commuters say they are getting to work and how much telework has been involved. So we asked employers to give us an idea of how much of their organization's staff are working from home. Only 6 respondents, or 9%, said no one from their organizations are currently teleworking. What we know here is that there are certainly a number of organizations that are still utilizing telework. 43%, in fact, of the respondents say at least half to 3/4 of their staff are still teleworking. Another 18% of respondents said their company is using telework still exclusively for day-to-day operations. So that's 100% of their staff are working from home for those 18% of the respondents. We also asked employers to estimate how many of their employees will be back to the work site at least part-time by mid-2021. In my conversations with employers, that was sort of the next benchmark date that employers were looking towards as far as bringing employees back, or what, their goals for what would be happening during that time frame. So this slide helps us to understand that companies are generally planning to bring back staff on a gradual basis, with about a third of the organizations planning to have 25 to 50% of staff return to the work site by early summer. Of those that plan to have 25 to 50% of the staff return to the work site, 11 are companies that employ 500 or more people. So we were able to break that out. So separately, just 16% or 11 companies plan to bring their entire staff back to the work site. So that's encouraging news. Bearing in mind that news of potential COVID-19 vaccines also developed during the month of November, it is possible that companies will adjust their return to work timelines as vaccines become more available on a widespread basis. But still, this slide brings us good news in that it illustrates that employers along the 494 corridor plan to incorporate telework more in the future. So we wanted to ask about permanent telework. So everyone has heard about the long-term influences of telework, but really it's hard to understand what that might look like in an overall reduction in commuter traffic. But this should give you an idea. One thing is clear, many companies intend to let a percentage of their staff continue to work long into the future. So 44% of the companies to respond said they will allow up to 25% of their staff to telework on a permanent basis. So companies were making that decision very recently, and it was good to get that information. Another 19% of respondents said their company is planning for 26 to 50% of staff to continue working from home. So for perspective, that 19% is the equivalent of 13 companies, and 9 of those 13 have 500 or more employees. So there is real potential for several thousand fewer drive-alone trips, which of course is better for everyone, better for the environment, and it's what we want to see. So considerations for the future when we sort of digest all of this data from commuters and from employers, what does this all mean? We're going to tell you what we think. So many commuters have said they will drive alone when they return to the work site. I think that's probably something you all have heard as well. Industry projections and the commuter concerns covered earlier both point to a steady rise in drive alone commutes, which will lead to multiple ramifications, including, of course, more rush hour traffic than pre-pandemic times, longer time spent commuting, resulting in stress and cost and all the things that go into that, and possibly more, and of course, adverse effects on the environment. So this is why telework will play such an important role as organizations build their return to work strategies. And then I'm going to hand it over to Michelle for the next few slides.
Sorry. I'm back with more numbers. What I've got here on this slide is kind of a comparison that we did with the May survey versus the August survey. And we looked at those primary commutes that we had asked people about. And what we see in this slide is the change of the evidence of change in our commutes already. In May, 79% of our respondents said they were teleworking, and there were substantially fewer people driving alone. And by August, 62% were teleworking, and we started to see that increase in other commutes. So for your reference, on the slide, the blue is from the May survey, the green is from the August survey. And in under 3 months, the percentage of people who said they were driving alone had doubled. I don't know, you can see that there. We went from 9% in May that were driving alone to 20% in August. So then we also wanted to look at some of the pros and cons that have come out from our respondents from the August survey. Of interest, hands down, 401 out of our 483 respondents said that saving time that's otherwise spent commuting is the #1 benefit to telework. Next, commuters also appreciated more time with family, and they also cited fewer distractions while teleworking and indicated they felt more productive at home. And then they had written in a number of other benefits that they shared with us. So some of those are that they felt like they had more flexibility with their work hours. They were saving time and money on their commute and the commute expenses. And since they weren't going out for lunch all the time or eating at their desk, they felt better about their diet and they were getting more exercise. And they identified a few others that we've listed here. Now, on the other side of the coin, though, we looked at the challenges that have come up from working from home. And when we talk about telework, we, at least in this environment, we have to say it with kind of the caveat that this is not a normal time for a telework arrangement. This is COVID-19. And COVID-19, this environment has come with a lot of challenges of its own. So the topics that people identified with, hands down, mental health issues, which included the feeling of isolation, stress, and depression, was called out by commuters as the highest, probably the highest amount of stress or challenges that they're facing in that survey. And they also cited communication, or the lack thereof, with their coworkers and management as challenges. But again, it should be noted that some of these challenges are not what would be considered normal, because it's due to telework. Right now, many people are caring for adult family members or helping children through distance learning. And those are not situations that would ordinarily be involved in a typical telework environment. So I'm going to turn this back to Kate now, and she'll wrap up the last few slides.
Thanks, Michelle. So we wanted to kind of talk about what this means to commuters. Commuters who want to continue a long-term telework arrangement should weigh carefully both the pros and cons of their individual telework arrangements. For some, telework is a godsend, but for others, it is isolating and stressful. And what rings true in this COVID environment may change in the future, as Michelle was pointing out. And we realize that some employees may not have a say or much control of if they telework or not in the coming months, depending on their position, type of work, if they're in a department that moves all remote. But there are many considerations that companies are weighing as they plan for post-COVID. So we understand that. Stress may be less without kids at home as well when COVID is over, or feeling separated from coworkers might lessen if you are able to strike a hybrid arrangement of working from home and going into the workplace. We recommend carefully evaluating your own personal situation and keep open lines of communication with your employer, especially if you begin to struggle with feelings of isolation or depression. And also consider that telework is just one sustainable commute option. As society emerges from the pandemic, new habits around maintaining the cleanliness and safety of shared vehicles will continue to emerge, we feel. So on that note, we just wanted to mention some of the resources that are available for other types of sustainable commuting, aside from telework, that can be helpful in planning a sustainable commute. There is a regional ride matching service that will help pair you up with people interested in carpooling and vanpooling. It is confidential and there's no obligation to contact people or to start sharing the ride. Transit information to help you plan your bus or train commute. Commuter Services does partner with Metro Transit and Southwest Transit and others to provide a personalized trip itinerary, a printout of stops, and kind of gives you a step-by-step guide on how to get to work. So we can provide that, and we put in a couple of free passes to give it a try, and you can access that, request that on our website. Bike community resources, we have many of those, including updated trail information. There's a lot of construction happening in the bike trails, and we update that and send that out, so you can request that as well. We have maps, we have tips on biking and traffic and how to plan your ride in inclement weather. And the Regional Guaranteed Ride Home program is free for anyone who is using any non-drive alone commute at least 3 days a week. It provides a nice safety net, peace of mind. So if you're in a situation where your regular commute changes unexpectedly, you can get home by taxi, Uber, or car rental, and you get reimbursed, and you have $100 per year to use for that. So that's a really nice, nice incentive and peace of mind program for commuters. And then we wanted to look what this means to employers. So we also asked employers what they see as the most pressing issues related to current telework arrangements. Not surprisingly, the mental health of employees is of the most concern. Employers are mindful of the feelings of isolation, stress, and depression, and the struggles of maintaining a work-life balance. Also not surprising is that issues around children, such as finding daycare options or helping kids with distance learning, are also of high concern for employers. Communication, or the lack thereof, between employees and supervisors and employees and their coworkers are also concerns for employers. So planning for the future. No doubt telework is still evolving as an operational tool for many companies. So to help employers plan for the future, we asked what types of trends and topics they want to learn more about. So the list includes the topics in order of interest. So the top was home office setup and ergonomics. So employers are still needing that basic information about, what is a good home office setup and ergonomic guidance. Followed very closely, almost tied to by mental health resources. And then the other list, managing flexible work arrangements, implementation and best practices, and lastly, developing a telework policy. So we understand that new telework resource needs are emerging as employers work through their return to work plan. To help you get started, Commuter Services already has several documents available for both companies and commuters. And we'll use the input from the list on the previous page to help us develop new material in the coming months. So you'll see we have quick start guidance, we have tips for telemanager and teleworker success. We do have that office safety and ergonomic guide, and we have sample telework policy agreements and policies. We're also in the development of a new telework-centric website where we'll house all of our telework materials, webinars, and relevant updates. Long-term, we envision the Twin Cities telework website as a one-stop shop for employer guidance. We just wanted to mention too, employer strategies, especially as we look at return to work and more employees will be coming back more regularly. So as companies look at that, there are just some strategies to think about. MetroPass is a deeply discounted bus pass program that is only available to participating employers. There's preferred parking. It's a valued benefit, and we can help set that up. There are bike loaner programs. We're seeing this more and more with companies, and especially e-bikes are gaining momentum again amongst employers for their many benefits, one being that they make a bike commute feasible for people with longer commutes. So there are loaner programs where people can just take their bike during the day out for lunch, so it reduces the need for them to drive to work. Or there are loaner programs where they loan the bike for an indefinite amount of time and it can be used for bike commuting. So we're hopeful to see those programs sprout up. And then fun incentive programs encourage commuters to try sustainable commuting. Commuter Services offers try it promotions, we call it, or you can initiate your own company challenge and offer prizes or even just bragging rights. So we find this useful when people sign an honor pledge on our website where they say, I'm going to try to bike to work once in the month of June. And they make that pledge, and then we check back with them, and the success rate is pretty high. So throwing in a cool prize is also great. And we find communicating regularly with employees about the commute programs and services available is a great idea. We offer customized communication, and we're happy to help you with that. So those are just a few of the employer strategies that we recommend to employers, and we are very happy to go through them in more detail and meet with you. So we have webinars coming up in 2021. Again, this was the first one in our Twin Cities Telework webinar series, but we have others coming up. So formalizing an effective telework policy and avoiding pitfalls is our next one. Best practice training for success as a remote worker and telemanager, and then mental health and wellness for teleworkers. So we're still planning dates and times, but those are the topics that we're looking at. So stay tuned. And we end the presentation with just something that we like to say, and you've probably heard this a lot, but I think we borrowed the graphic from Metro Transit. The best commute is no commute. So with the potential for so many commuters to start driving alone, once companies start bringing employees back to the work site, we thank employers for utilizing telework as a long-term sustainable commute option and strategy. So thank you so much. Lots of information. That concludes our formal presentation, but we'd love to open it up and take questions and have a discussion. So I know we have some questions, it looks like, Michelle.
Oh, we do. First of all, let's see here. We had a couple from Sam. She wanted to know, first of all, the response rate for the August commuter survey. That was a 12% response rate. Again, it was a smaller pool, but we were still very encouraged by the number of people that responded. And you had asked for she'd asked to please share a link where the slide deck will be and the recording will be saved. We'll be sending that information out after the webinar. And we've been working on building up a YouTube channel. So eventually this will live on that YouTube channel, but we'll send you a link to both in the future. And then we had another question to the link to the Twin Cities Telework website. And Kate, I'm going to take that one, I think, because we just had this conversation. We don't have the link yet. It is, the website is under construction. So we were trying to get it done in time to launch in conjunction with this, but with the holidays in the middle of everything, it just hasn't quite come together yet. Let's see, over in our chat, we have It's
There's
from
one
Dan.
question I can,
Yeah.
yeah. So Danae, if that's the right name, asks about what about programs for secure long-term use lockers, meaning lockers that can be locked and allow commuters to leave toiletries, shoes, and clothing longer than just daytime to ease bike commuting. It's a great idea. We do know some companies that do offer that. We call them dedicated lockers. Medica in Minnetonka offers that. Optum does as well. Optum in Eden Prairie and Minnetonka, they offer a program where their employees can reserve a locker for a season. So there's this, spring, summer season, or the winter, fall, winter season. So it's a great idea. We encourage it. It is a great incentive for employees to bike to work because it just makes it easier and helps with planning and all of that. So great question. I hope that helps, and I hope that I answered that. Yeah, the others in chat are just comments, I believe. But we have some time.
Yeah.
If there are other questions, we thought this would take a little longer, but we're happy to take more questions. And we'll just wait a minute here. Okay. Well, I don't see new questions.
I think they're all in shock yet. We threw so many numbers at them.
We
You
did.
could do it again if you didn't digest everything.
So especially good that we'll send out the recording and you can, take it in your own pace. I'm just looking here. It looked like there was something new in chat.
Yeah, from Becky. She wanted to know if we're going to be posting our recording online. Becky, yeah, we're like I mentioned earlier, we're building our YouTube channel, so we'll have a link to that, but we'll certainly share that.
And then there's a question from Micah. Did the survey have a section in it that explains why they're concerned to carpool besides social distancing? Did we get into specific questions on that?
That first survey was, that was really just kind of starting to get a pulse for what was happening in the area. So we really didn't drill down on that, but having done 3 surveys and digested all of that information so far, Micah, I think we'll probably look at that a little more closely in the future. I know that some of our partners would be interested in that information.
Great question. I think that is maybe we could flesh that out more in a follow-up survey, especially as employees are returning to work, and to hone down on other reasons for that. Great question.
Is there anything else?
Yeah, any other questions? Let's see. Okay, I don't think so. I think we have allowed that, and so thank you for attending today. We hope it was useful and informative and makes you think and helps you in the work that you do. You have our information up there. Please reach out with any questions or comments to discuss anything that we presented today. We are very happy to have a conversation with you. So thanks again for spending some of your day with us, and we look forward to our next webinar. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.